Welcome to the Retro Chat. Welcome.
Who'd have thought you'd ever see this again?
I know, this is so weird, isn't it? Welcome to episode 6 of Retro Chat, where we're talking WrestleMania 6. And welcome to my guest at this time. I love saying that. It's always been saying that you always say my guest at this time, my long-time, close, personal long-time friend. Someone who honestly never thought, A, we would ever speak again, or B, we would ever do a show again.
Well,
together.
Absolutely. And it's happening right now. We didn't even know we were going to be live until like 2 minutes ago, but we decided to do it.
You know, I got to throw you into the team. It's what we always used to do back in the day, wasn't it?
Yeah. Why not? Let's just do it. Let's do it.
You got to do it. So for those of you who don't know who this gentleman is to my right on the screen, when I started in podcasting a long time ago, I was still a young, bouncy little Andy from Bournemouth. And someone took me under his wing, and that was this dude. And Lee Tyers, of course, from Ministry of Slam. And Lee, we really changed the game, or more to the point, you changed the game.
I don't know about
that. Wrestling podcasts and wrestling radio here in the UK. We kicked off with TSC and went right the way through, didn't we?
Yeah, we again, not too many people, certainly on this side of the pond, were doing anything like it, and we really kind of took over the UK scene in wrestling podcasting, which was amazing, and gave us both a creative outlet. We managed to get guests from all ends of the earth who had stuff to do with wrestling, and just absolutely phenomenal, and such a great time being able to listen back to some of those. Really, really great times, and certainly treasured. Very different to the podcasting landscape now, where literally everyone, I mean, I live in a big block of flats. There's probably someone else doing a podcast about wrestling in the same block of flats, let alone, elsewhere on the internet. So it's crazy times. But we were there at the beginning when people didn't really know what podcasting was. And we were there doing live shows and doing podcasts and all sorts. It was really good.
We were there at the Genesis.
If you want
to steal a TNA pay-per-view.
Oh, speaking of TNA, one thing that people don't know about me is literally 10 minutes ago.
Oh yeah.
I was crowned the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and I'm just gonna just to show everyone my amazing belt there. I haven't had enough time walking around my house with it on yet, so I'll do that later.
See, this is why we call the show the tagline "Back in Time." Because literally he's gone back 10 years to when TNA was TNA. You never know.
Totally. I mean, there's no mention of Impact Wrestling on there. This is 100% TNA.
So this is the Moose belt.
The Moose belt is this is the belt that AJ Styles had back in the day. Kurt Angle won, and the bits. In fact, I mean, this is nothing to do with WrestleMania 6, but apparently this belt used to get broken a lot. These bits here used to snap off, and you can see it on some of the TNA promo pictures. So they replaced it with the belt that Moose has now, which is a bit more, and it's I think it's called the TNA Big Gold because it was their equivalent of the Big Gold belt. But yeah, it's that's fun. Haven't had a belt for ages since I had the ECW belt way back in the day.
Jeez, so you still got that? Have you got rid of that
now? Jeremy Graves, WCW Forever, and the TSC forums has got that belt now.
So I'm going to tag him into this just for that handle because I haven't heard that handle in a very long time. So what are you up to now then? So we know you're still on Ministry of Slam.
Yeah, still on Ministry of Slam. I mean, I hadn't done podcasting for a long time. We did Ministry of Slam until, 2012, took a big break, tried to bring it back in sort of a bit of a half-hearted attempt in 2017. But Lawrence, who was also part of the show back in the day, said, do you want to do it? And we said we'd do something once a month because didn't want to really commit to it that much. But then now we're doing it every single week and doing a video version. And, Andy, you'll know the amount of work you have to put in to not only a podcast, but then if you're doing video as well, there's so much work behind it just to create 2 hours worth of content. It's ridiculous. You have to really prepare. It takes over a whole week.
Yeah, it really does. And now you've got to make sure your hair looks all right. And
hence the hat.
And the hat comes into play. and you've got the set in place.
Yeah, I mean, the set's in place. This is literally made out of, it's just wood. It's like an L-shaped little wood set with a shelf attached to it and all my figures. But getting back onto topic, the two most important figures, Andy, are the Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, and the World Wrestling Federation Champion, Hulk Hogan. Look at that.
The ultimate challenge right now.
Exactly. That's what it's all Absolutely.
About. So let's talk about what we're actually here to talk about
why not?
now. Because when you and I started talking again, and hell has quite literally frozen over out there right now, that we're back on the airwaves again. I gave you two options. So I said to you, what would you like to do? Would you like to do SummerSlam 92 or would you like to do WrestleMania 6?
Yeah.
And you picked WrestleMania 6. Why this pay-per-view?
So I'd say, I mean, I would love to do SummerSlam 92 because I was at SummerSlam 92 and it was, really key. Obviously, the Brett versus Bulldog match and the Warrior and Savage for the WWE title. And it was a really sort of classic time in the WWE, or WWF. I'm going to call it WWF. We're not going to get sued, are we?
I hope not. I'm playing a lot of video in this evening.
But WrestleMania 6 was kind of my key spot in wrestling. I started watching wrestling about 3 months before WrestleMania 6 happened. So when my first ever wrestling event that I watched was the main event, and it's still on the network now. And it's Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior versus Dino Bravo. And in the end, Earthquake tries beating up the Ultimate Warrior. Hulk Hogan comes out to try and save the Warrior. Warrior doesn't want his help, and they have a bit of a back and forth. And then it was just a whole build towards WrestleMania 6 from there, which to me was like, I mean, even by that point, after watching a couple of months of it, you knew that this doesn't normally happen. These are two good guys against each other. This doesn't happen. And they've got both the belts and they're going against each other. And that never happens. And just, I was cramming wrestling 24/7 just to try and get up to speed with it, and literally could not wait to watch the show. And we couldn't get it live over here in the UK. No. I don't think. Had to wait till it was on. I think there was a 2-part show on Eurosport. They broke the pay-per-view down into 2 sections and put it on Eurosport. They chopped a couple of the matches out. I think some of the B matches, like the Tito Santana versus Barbarian, and a couple of the others. I think Rick Rude and Jimmy Snuka took a cut as well. But then all the rest of it, I think, was blocked out into 2 1-hour shows on Eurosport a good month or so later. And for a while, we were like, well, there was no internet. There weren't really newsletters and stuff back then. Certainly in the UK, what do you do? How do you find out? You know that it's happened. How do you find out who's going to win? You just have to keep watching wrestling. And I remember that the longest week in the world ever until WWF Superstars came on the following weekend, and we found out that the Warrior won, and it was amazing. It was really good. Classic pay-per-view.
And it was torturous at that point, wasn't it? Because if you remember, and they still do it now, but when they do the show following the pay-per-view or the network exclusive now, they do the stills. And you were seeing the stills of like the Warrior holding the championship up, going, what the hell happened? Why didn't he?
How the hell did he beat Hulk Hogan?
Were you a Warrior or a Hulkamaniac?
I liked the Warrior, but I'd have to say I was definitely a Hulkamaniac. Definitely fell on his side at the time. Hulk Hogan was it. He was the cartoon character guy. And I think even though I wasn't a wrestling fan before I started properly watching WWF, I was aware of who Hulk Hogan was. If someone could have said, who's this guy, I think I could have picked out, oh, that's Hulk Hogan. Because I've seen him in the Rocky film, like Rocky 3, he was in that. But Ultimate Warrior I'd never seen before. So I was kind of the Hulk Hogan guy before I started.
No, you mentioned the Rocky film there, but the film he's known for, of course, No Holds Barred.
Well, yeah. I mean, I hadn't seen that. I'd never seen that up until that point. But yeah, No Holds Barred. What a movie. What a movie. Yeah. Well, in fact, there's a bit of trivia that we'll move on to in a little bit that involves No Holds Barred as well, and WrestleMania 6.
Really?
Really interesting. Yeah. Oh, should I do it now?
Do it now. Don't tease it.
Let's throw it out now. So originally, when they were having the whole Hulk Hogan and Zeus feud, the blow-off match originally was supposed to be WrestleMania 6, the championship match, Hulk Hogan versus Zeus. But because Zeus kind of showed his limitations, and they kind of did everything they could with Zeus, and during the summer, and the SummerSlam 89 match, which was great, and then they did that what was it called? Rage in a Cage? No, it wasn't Rage in a Cage. It was something similar to that. They had the Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Hulk Hogan against Zeus and Randy Savage, and that was right at the end of the year. But they just realized that Zeus's flame had kind of fizzled out a little bit, so they changed booking up a little bit, and they moved Warrior into the slot and champion versus champion.
what I think is hilarious in that entire story that you've just said there, the limitations of Zeus.
Yeah.
Yet we're having a main event with the two most limited performers in the WWF at the time, Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, for almost 25 minutes.
But it didn't matter. It honestly didn't matter. It was all about the characters back then. It was all about seeing the people who, just seeing the big, colorful athletes. They were giant people. They were beating the crap out of each other. We didn't care about moonsaults and dives through the ropes and stuff like that back then. It was all just about two characters, who was going to win. That's all it was.
One of the things that when you think of WrestleMania 6, you think of the intro, the constellations of the fact. Screw it. Are you ready for it?
Yeah. Let's do it now.
Shall we kick off this in style? Here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Unbelievable.
How cool is that?
I mean, number one, you've got Vince. It's old school Vince doing the voiceover and the that's the voice, which is amazing. And then you've also got the old school WrestleMania theme, which you just cannot beat.
No.
It's absolutely great. The old school WrestleMania logo, which they still should be using to this day. And it's Hogan and Warrior, and it's just all about the hype. It's no one really cared if they were limited workers. You didn't care back then. You just cared about the hype. It was Hulk Hogan, it was Ultimate Warrior, it was WrestleMania. What the hell's going to happen?
It was state-of-the-art graphics at that point, wasn't it? When you think about the constellations coming in and the way it was animated, it got you in the mood, didn't it? It got you hyped for it. It got you ready. And go on then. Your best Vince McMahon. It's WrestleMania.
Do you want me to do the whole thing? I could do the whole promo from the start because I've watched this card a hell of a lot.
I'll tell you what. Let's see if this will work. All right. I'm going to try something here.
Are you going to mute it and play it?
I'm going to mute it and play it. Are you ready?
Let's give it a go. Go on.
Here we
Let's
go.
do it. I mean, I'm definitely going for a beer now.
Yes, I don't blame you. Bud Light, good choice. Good choice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't do that day in, day out. And he probably had to do that take about 3 or 4 times. How the hell he could still talk, I don't know.
Well, knowing Vince, he wanted it to be perfect. But the one thing that I never realized this, and a bit of trivia for you, the closed circuit went down before the event at WrestleMania 6.
I did not know that.
Well, you should have known that. And I'll tell you why you should have known that. Because from the Vault this past week was an interview we did, or you did, back with the legend that was the genius Lanny Poffo.
The genius Lanny Poffo, yeah.
Good friend of yours, I know.
There
still in contact with him. Boxed figure, I see that.
Boxed and signed Lanny Poffo figure from 1997.
So Lanny was our WrestleMania 6 build-up show before we got to here. And one of the stories he mentioned was the fact that someone came running to Vince in the back and just went, the closed circuit's gone down. We've lost closed circuit. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're doing. Vince goes, how long have we got? And he went, well, the show's on air. Well, get it sorted then. Just send him to the back, telling him to fix it.
Yeah, go fix it. Amazing. I mean... But again, from us over in the UK, we didn't even know what closed circuit TV was. We just wanted it on whatever show we could get, however we could reach out to it and get it. Do
you remember how excited we were back in the day when it moved from the month wait to like maybe the Thursday, and it was on Sky Movies or Sky Movies Plus at that point?
That's right. Yes, Sky Movies Plus, or the movie channel, whichever one.
Yeah, exactly. And a pay-per-view that was 3 hours was about 6 hours long because they kept putting the ad breaks in. So every time it went to an interview, you went to an ad break, and then it went to this. And, it made the longest pay-per-views even longer.
It sure did. I mean, so a little bit of trivia. Do you know who was in attendance? There are some famous people in attendance, and I think we know already who was in attendance at WrestleMania. Edge and Christian. Obviously, are two main guys that you always see the little screenshot of Edge, the freeze frame with him highlighted with his mullet. Lance Storm was in attendance.
Was he?
So was Renee Young. Obviously, Diamond Dallas Page was there because he drove Rhythm and Blues to the ring. Yeah. But also Stephen Amell, Green Arrow. He was in attendance at WrestleMania. Of course, he comes from the Toronto area. So yes, he was in attendance at WrestleMania 6.
I never knew that. I knew obviously Edge and Christian and DDP, but I never knew that Renee Paquette and Stephen Amell were in attendance.
Yeah, exactly. So some of these people obviously inspired to get into the wrestling business at a later time, and Lance Storm as well.
Amazing. Wow, Geez, Storm Academy. Well, Canadian native and first pay-per-view the WWF done from Canada. So it was a really experimental phase, and also the first time they took WrestleMania out of the US. And when you consider that's the baby, the flagship.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
2
kind of a
years
big risk.
Yeah,
2 years at the Trump Plaza. Of course, they did, WrestleMania 1 at Madison Square Garden, WrestleMania 2 from the 3 different arenas. They were trying to make it bigger and bigger and bigger every single time. The 3 arenas. How do you get bigger than the 3 arenas? You go to the Silver Dome, which is huge. So then how do you get any bigger than that? You can't. Let's just totally change it and take it to Trump Plaza with lots of gambling and stuff going on. They did that for 2 years. And I think you can tell when you look back at the some of the crowd noise and everything from those events. It wasn't, it was a New Jersey crowd. They weren't very excited about it. So they wanted to get it back in a big arena. They wanted to do something different. So they took it to Canada. They stuck it in the Sky Dome. Originally, obviously, a baseball stadium, not really designed for wrestling, but, filled it out really nicely and looked amazing. That opening shot when the logo fades out and you see the audience and just absolutely huge venue, 64,000 people in there.
64,000 were in there, of course, and then became known as the Rogers Stadium, and now has been pulled down, as far as I'm aware.
Has it been? I don't think it has it? God, I'm going to be gutted if it has. Right. Oh, Google wow. It. Let's Google it. Let's Google it.
Live Googling, Mr. Priceless, if you're watching this.
Sky Dome. So it's the Rogers Centre. No, it's still okay. They pulled down the Silver Dome.
That's the one.
Yeah, so the Silver Dome was the Hogan and Andre one. They've pulled that down. Rogers Centre still exists. It's where the Toronto Blue Jays play in the MLB for baseball. Right, so there we go.
Very much correct. There we go. So one of the biggest cards in WrestleMania history, 14 matches.
Unbelievable.
Was on this. And we had a dark match as well. Do you know who the dark match was?
The dark match was it someone like the Brooklyn Brawler and Jim Powers?
Close. It was the Brooklyn Brawler against Paul Roma.
Paul Roma, the other half of the Young Stallions. And do you know who the referee was for that match?
Shane McMahon.
It sure was, yeah.
I listened to Something to Wrestle With as well.
Yeah. But amazing. Yes. Can you imagine that? Shane McMahon as a referee at WrestleMania didn't appear on the screen, but he was there pre-show doing some work for Vince. Amazing.
But he said that was important to him because he did an interview, didn't he? And said that was very important for Shane O'Mac to work his way up from the ground level and do pretty much everything within the company. To the idea of taking over from old daddy some days, now it's Trips and Stephanie that are going to be taken over. And
yeah, very weird. I mean, that whole situation with Shane and, everyone thought immediately he was going to be the guy to pick up the reins. But yeah, Shane and Stephanie and Triple H obviously are the people now. So,
well, Shane's the Prince Harry of the McMahon family.
Yeah, I think you could go that route. Definitely.
Only on this show, only with us. Can you come around and talk royals?
Yeah, throw royal discussion.
So we kicked off the main card with Rick the Model Martel.
Yeah.
Straight off not long in the model gimmick, really, because it was only at WrestleMania 5 that he split with Tito Santana as part of Strikeforce. And against the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard.
Yeah.
And walked out on the tag match and then became the model with the Aramis and the nebulizer.
Yeah.
And he went up against the Birdman, Coco Beware. And it was a cracking little opener, really, if you think about it.
It was a solid match. I mean, again, something that you could, it was just your kind of filler match. It was a match to get the audience rolled up a little bit, get them excited. It went less than 4 minutes, but, Coco Beware was always renowned for having a really hard head. So there was one of the old spot that they used to do with the Samoans when Martel banging his head into the turnbuckle, and then Coco's like, that's not going to work, and then gives him a headbutt. And Coco does the old move that he always likes to do where he dives and whoever moves out the way, and then he lands on the top rope and just bounces off. And then Rick Martel with the classic Boston Crab for the win.
Or the Walls of Jericho.
Well, the Walls of Jericho. The Walls of Jericho never used to be a proper Boston Crab. It was always kind of that half kind of twisty version. And then it changed into a Boston Crab.
I think that's because Jericho couldn't hold it any longer. So
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I had to sit back a bit. So to give you an indication of how Dave Meltzer thought of this. So all the way through, after we've done the matches, I'm going to give you the Meltzer rating.
Okay.
It's really polarizing. Some of these matches are just Really fun. What would you say Meltzer gave this match out of 5 stars?
Star and a half.
2 stars, not
Oh,
far off.
okay. That's not bad.
It was a solid opener, solid opener. We then moved to the first of the title matches, and this was for the WWF tag team titles. It was Axe and Smash of Demolition.
Yeah.
Facing off against Andre the Giant and Haku with Bobby the Brain Heenan, the Colossal Connection, which ran for about 9 minutes, 30 seconds. Demolition became the new three-peat World Wrestling Federation tag team champions. But it's what happened at the end of the match that was the real big standout talking point.
Absolutely. I mean, just to cover off, I always talk about, if anyone asks me what my favorite pop in wrestling is, it's between two. Number one is Money in the Bank 2011, when CM Punk's music hits and he comes out in front of the Chicago crowd after the few weeks before that was the pipe bomb thing. Yeah. And the place went absolutely nuts. And listening to that, it brings goosebumps on your arms if you watch that. This is another one when Axe and Smash pin Haku and win the belts. Is you listen to the crowd just erupt when they win. Crowd was so ready for it, absolutely amazing. And then, yeah, as you say, after the match, you had obviously Andre the Giant was slowing down in his career, so they decided to stick him in the tag team with Haku, so he didn't have to do too much work. Haku could do a lot of the in-ring stuff, and you could bring Andre in just to clobber him and a couple of chops and big punches, and away you go. But yeah, Andre the Giant got tied up in the ropes. Bobby Heenan was annoyed at him for getting tied in the ropes and not being able to get out and help Haku. And then after the end of the match, started blaming Andre for the loss, slaps him. Then Andre grabs Bobby Heenan by the collar of his jacket and paintbrushes him. Only, I think, one of them actually connected. And then gives him a headbutt. No, it was a punch, wasn't it, first, I think? And anyway, Bobby falls out of the ring, runs away, and then Andre turns around. Haku is there, ready to take his head off. He grabs Haku's foot. He's the one who he gives the headbutt to. And then he falls out of the ring. And Andre the Giant, once again, is a face for the first time since just before WrestleMania 3.
But then no further matches in the WWF, because like you said, at that point, he was really debilitated, could barely move. Thank God Heenan didn't sell the mist paintbrush, the mist paint.
Yeah, he just sort of like moved his face to the side, and yeah, that could have been awful. But
one of the really cool things about this, mate, was the fact that this was the era of classic storytelling, right? When Bobby Heenan came out again later on through the night, he was still selling the effects of the attack by Andre the Giant. He was still disheveled. He was still roughed up. And it just gave it that level of importance and actual, this is actually really happening,
And then he, at that point, he said, well, that's it. I'm through with him. I'm going to start a new Heenan family with members that care about me. And then, we'll get onto it a little bit later, because there are two people who very shortly after this show became members of the Heenan family. They were in matches later on. We'll get to that.
We will. Moving us on to our next match, which was Hercules Hernandez facing off against Earthquake with the Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart. Now, this is pre-Hogan squash era and pre-feud with the Snake. But Earthquake in that, John Tenter in that blue singlet coming out, no real character development, didn't really know he was an Earthquake.
No. This was all about the build. This was, it's essentially a squash match. Hercules got a few shots in, but it was a squash match to set up Earthquake and make him look so dominant. Because, as you referred to, just a couple of weeks after WrestleMania, Hulk Hogan was squashed by Earthquake, and all in the run up to WrestleMania. Earthquake was sitting on people; they were taken away in stretchers and all sorts. So, but yeah, certainly coming into his own, coming into his character slowly.
It's the precursor to Yokozuna, wasn't it? With the whole bonsai, girl.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very similar. But Earthquake, you could legit see him. When he beats up someone really easily, like Hercules, you can see how he could be a threat to Hulk Hogan. He was really believable at the time. They
did such a good job of building the character, didn't they? And with Jimmy Hart being the spokesperson for him, back in that time, and even now to this day, there are two managers. If you said name the top 5 managers in pro wrestling, it would be Bobby the Brain Heenan and the Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart as number 1 and 2. Yeah, because of the way they got the crowd to literally hate them. but without taking it away from the in-ring performer as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where you obviously knew that they were, you could see them outside of the ring doing their thing, and they would distract you, but almost to the point where it enhanced the talent in the ring, and you felt that any person that they were with was so much more of a threat because they had them at ringside. Bobby Heenan obviously wasn't, aside from like slapping someone or kicking them or whatever, and Jimmy Hart with the megaphone who bonked them over the head with it and things like that. It just, you don't get managers like that anymore. You don't get managers really, full stop, that are proper wrestling managers. I miss those
days. I miss those days of the old school. I think the last proper one we had was Oscar from Men on a Mission.
Yeah, probably a Johnny Polo.
Raven. Yeah. Sensational Cherry is another one.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very good. Again, she's in a match a little bit later on, actually in the ring.
Oh, yeah, but there's some really sad stats on that match, and we'll talk about it in a second. Meltzer gave this one just 1 out of 5.
Oh, really? Okay.
I
kind of get that. It wasn't a great match. It was just set up to put Earthquake over. What was the Demolition match?
Sorry, I meant to say that was 2 out of 5 stars.
Now, I'd have given it more than that, just for the crowd reaction.
I would have given it a solid 3. Because you had the turn of Andre and like you said, you had the pop. Just going back to that match, the one thing that always surprised me about that is how over Demolition were at the end. And then a couple of months later, they turned them heel.
Yeah.
And very quickly dropped the tag straps to the Hart Foundation, which...
Well, I think that the main reason for that was because they had Legion of Doom came in right after WrestleMania 6. And it was, you had 2 tag teams essentially with the same gimmick, face paints and leather and studs and stuff like that. You couldn't have 2... good guy tag teams like that. One of them had to turn heel, and Vince has obviously just spent a load of money to bring in Legion of Doom. They were the new shiny car in the garage. That they're the guys that you want to have as the faces. So it was logical to turn Demolition. But yeah, I think they deserved another good run with the tag team championships as faces. It would have been great.
Demolition turned more than the Big Show, though, didn't they?
Absolutely.
They were face. They had the Baron. Then they had Mr. Fuji. Then they were face team, then they were a heel team again, then they went face and they went heel.
Yeah.
Then they split up.
Yes, Repo Man.
Yeah, less said about that, the better. Moving on to match 5 on the card. Now, this one went nearly 8 minutes, and it's known for Mr. Perfect's first singles loss on pay-per-view, although it wasn't his first loss in the WWF, because he actually lost the Ultimate Warrior a couple of weeks earlier at Madison Square Garden on MSG TV. But this was Brutus Beefcake defeating Kurt Hennig, the late, great Mr. Perfect, with Lanny Poffo, the genius, in Perfect's corner. Meltzer gave this one 2 3/4 stars. But for me, the match was great because Kurt would, you know what Mr. Perfect was like. He would flip, flop, make the worst person in the ring look good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was Lanny at the end of it, the haircut.
So it was all kind of Brutus the Barber Beefcake, I think, had a match with the Genius at the Royal Rumble and cut some of Genius's hair right after the match, as he had a tendency to do. Mr. Perfect, who was Lanny's kind of charge at the time, came out and started beating up Brutus because he didn't want it to happen. That set up this match. So the Genius already had sort of a bit of a crew cut and then long hair hanging out the back. It looked a bit weird, but so Brutus Beefcake defeats Mr. Perfect. Perfect gets out of the ring because the whole tease was that Brutus was going to cut off Mr. Perfect's hair if he won the match, and everyone was thinking, wow, is this going to happen? Mr. Perfect gets out of the ring. The Genius comes back or gets grabbed by Brutus and dragged back in the ring, and he finishes off the job and literally is snipping off bits and shaving it and all sorts just to try and get as much hair as he can off of the Genius. And straight after this, the Genius started wearing a long blonde curly wig, if you remember.
Oh yeah,
to try and cover it all over. Very weird.
it was a shame. It was a shame with Lanny that he never got a decent run on his own. I mean, he was known more for being a manager, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
In the WWF.
His kind of heyday, and I say heyday, his in-ring performance situation. I think was probably 3 or 4 years before this, sort of 86, 87 time. He was a real sort of strong mid-card guy, but he didn't have a character at the time. He was just he was a face. If you could have got him in the Genius character or some kind of other character, his performance would have been absolutely invaluable. I mean, if he came along now, some of the performances that he was given were really great. And I know when we talked to Rob Van Dam back in the day, he said that Lanny Poffo was one of the people that inspired his style in the ring because he was so acrobatic and some of the moves, he took straight from the Genius. And real shame that he never really got that limelight. But he's, as we've spoken to Lanny many a time, and he's very happy being Randy Savage's less talented younger brother. He's quite happy with that role.
But best-selling author as well, at least 2 books.
Yes, that are on my bookshelf over there.
Oh, jeez. Is there anything in Lanny's you don't have?
I don't think so, apart from an interview with his brother, which never happened. But there we go. What can you do?
Well, maybe we'll go back and I know. No, I'm just going to drop that. There's just no point. Moving on to the next match then, and this was at the time possibly one of the most controversial matches in recent memory, because if you remember, this is where Rowdy Roddy Piper came to the ring half white and half black. So his right side of his body was painted completely black all the way down.
Yeah.
And he said in an interview that wasn't to be racist. I haven't got a racist part of my body. It was because I wanted to kind of emulate Michael Jackson, who didn't do black and white, the music video, until 1991. So we'll see how you want with that. This was 6 minutes 48 seconds, 1 3/4 stars by Meltzer. What did you make of this?
So it all started again. A lot of these set up at the Royal Rumble. The two of them, I think. Roddy Piper chucked out Bad News Brown, and then Bad News Brown grabbed Roddy's hair and pulled him out of the ring. So, and they fought all the way to the back. That set up this match. I think what I got from it was almost again, I know it was before the song, but it doesn't matter if you're black or white. Look, half of me could be black, half of me could be white. It doesn't matter. I'm not black or white. I'm both, sort of thing. That was kind of exactly. That was the kind of message I got from it, rather than, and I think maybe WWE looking at the sensitivity of it, having a whiter than white Scotsman beating up a black guy. I just think, stick Roddy Piper in the black and white, and it doesn't matter what race I am. This isn't about race. It's still about just me kicking your ass. Interesting match though, and this is my kind of enduring memory of Roddy Piper, because he didn't have a lot of matches back in the day. So this was all I really had to judge Roddy Piper on. So it's, a very interesting time. But just really a fight. It was a brawl. It was a double count out. They beat the crap out of each other all the way back up the aisle and through the curtain. And it was before the day of the cameras following them backstage. They went through the curtain and that was it. You never saw them again.
You let your imagination run wild at that point, wasn't it? Were they fighting in the alleyway? Were they fighting in the car lot? Or did they just shake hands and walk away and had a nice little mucker?
Yeah, just very weird, very weird. But again, I didn't have anything else to sort of compare it with at the time. So, okay, they went to the back. They don't have cameras in the back, so we'll leave it there, shall we?
That's the match finished. We'll move on to the next one. So after that, we had a backstage skit with the Bolsheviks, Nikolai Volkov, Boris Zukov, and Steve Allen, who, for us over here in the UK, we had no idea who this dude was. He was just some sort of pianist, singer, comedian type thing, doing the Russian national anthem. And let's just say that skit lasted longer than the match between the Bolsheviks and the Heart Foundation. It ran for... How long do you think that match ran for?
The match. I know how long the match ran for because I've got it up on the the thing. It's been talked about a lot, but I think the Steve Allen thing probably went about a minute and a half.
Yeah.
The Heart Foundation and Bolsheviks match 19 seconds. Unbelievable. Quick
heart attack, got the pin. That was it. And you talk about pops. The Heart Foundation got a huge pop.
Yeah. I mean, it was literally, it came out. So the Bolsheviks, their thing was they'd sing the Russian national anthem at the beginning of every match. And the face tag team, whoever it was, would normally beat the crap out of them afterwards or be super annoyed anyway. The Anvil just decides to start battering them when they're halfway through. I think Volkov gets chucked out the ring by Brett.
Yeah.
Anvil is just he lands about 3 punches on Boris, picks him up, and then Brett's off the ropes, does the quick clothesline pin. 1, 2, 3, done. 19 seconds.
And that's it. And then we get to our next match. It was literally blink and you missed it. But the pop was worth it. Quarter of a star. That match.
I mean, again, I get that from if you're specifically looking at just the wrestling match. There wasn't much wrestling to judge on that, but the angle of it, again, they were grooming the Hart Foundation to be the next tag team champions again, take the belts from Demolition. You could already see that this was the build and this is where they were going with it. So yeah, again, I liked it for the whole sort of feeling of it, the nostalgia, the pop that you've just got to look at these matches, the reaction of the crowd. The crowd loved it. So how is that a bad match?
Exactly. I think there was a bad match on this card. In all fairness, maybe the next one. Bobby Heenan was back out with his second match of the night. This time with his new squeeze, new protege, the Barbarian, fresh off the tag team with the Warlord as the Powers of Pain, facing off against Tito Santana in a singles match. About 4.5 minutes. The Barbarian went over Tito Santana. They kind of had to, didn't they? They had to make the Barbarian look strong in his first proper singles push. Yeah,
again, they did the same with the Warlord for about a month or so after the Powers of Pain split up. Barbarian went with Bobby Heenan, Warlord went with Slick. Mr. Fuji sold their contracts to those two individually because at the time, Mr. Fuji was investing all of his time into his new tag team that he brought all the way over from Japan, and we're going to see them in action later, the Orient Express. The Barbarian and the Warlord were still in their old Powers of Pain things, but they were just singles wrestlers at the time, and it was probably a few weeks or so afterwards that they put them in the Barbarian came out in the whole sheepskin or bearskin cape and everything, and all the woolly boots and stuff, and then the Warlord obviously in his Phantom of the Opera black shiny armor thing. But yeah, I mean, it's Barbarian's first, well, I say first, but since the split, his first sort of big singles match. Tito Santana, that kind of era was just around to have the heels beat him up, really, and put on a good match and make the bad guys look good. And that's exactly what he did in this match.
And it wasn't really until 1992 that they repackaged Tito into El Matador and gave him some sort of a push, but he never quite got the level of recognition that Santana needed. And I think what was also interesting was the fact that you've had Haku split from one tag team. You've had the Barbarians split from a tag team. And by this time next year at WrestleMania 7, they were both back in the tag team.
Yes, yeah.
Each other.
Exactly. That I never liked that tag team. Maybe we'll talk about WrestleMania 7 another time. But I mean, it was really weird. I mean, Tito Santana, I remember, this was my first experience of Tito, and I saw him on like Superstars a couple of times, and they kept saying former Intercontinental Champion Tito Santana. I'm like, what? This guy? Like, the Ultimate Warrior's got that belt. Are you sure you're talking about the same belt? There's no way Tito Santana had this championship. He just gets beaten up by the big bad guys. So yeah, really weird. I always struggled to work out how Tito Santana ever made it to Intercontinental Championship level.
Yeah, it was just no, just don't really know.
Yeah.
Okay. So, next up, this match was again started the build at the 1990 Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
With that great segment with the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and Sapphire.
Yeah.
Then it moved in to this mixed tag team match at WrestleMania 6. Dusty Rhodes and the Sensational Sapphire versus Randy the Macho King Savage and Sensational Queen Sherry, with Miss Elizabeth in the corner of Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. So the first time you've seen Liz since she split with Randy Savage, and he joined up with Sherry. The sad thing about this match, and I'm not trying not to laugh about it because it's not funny, but there is a shot that you might see on WWE.com, which has Savage, Dusty, Sapphire, Sherry, Liz, and The Think all in the ring.
Yeah, and they've all gone.
One of them now are with us.
That's scary, isn't it? Really scary.
I think just to think that even Joey Morello, wasn't it?
Oh, might have been. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. Yeah. So yeah, very, very weird. Yeah, Dusty obviously went. Sapphire, Elizabeth, sadly, after our relationship with Lex Luger. Randy Savage, probably the most recent to go. Sherry, yeah, maybe 2007. Yeah, but I mean, again, it was an interesting match. I'd never seen Sherry in the ring before. Didn't really know she was a popular like female wrestler at the time. Sapphire obviously wasn't a women's wrestler, and at the time, I had no idea who Elizabeth was. This random woman that just turned up. Had no idea she had any kind of relation to Randy Savage or any kind of history there. It was only afterwards when I started buying old videos, VHSs and stuff, and looking at WrestleMania 5, WrestleMania 4, and oh, right, this was what happened with Randy Savage, and that's why he hates her and all of this. But yeah, I mean, Sapphire was awful. But you know, fair play to Savage and Sherry for doing the job here on a like biggest pay-per-view of the year. They were made to look really stupid, and you know, fair play to them.
But it was the era of the old mixed tag rules, wasn't it? When the man could face the man, but the women faced the women. There was no intergender wrestling, which kind of made it feel better. And they were teasing that whole Sherry trying to get Dusty to slap her or body slam her or something like that.
Yeah,
it was classic, like you said, classic storytelling.
I mean, the rules of it were, I mean, so for example, if you had Dusty and Savage in the ring, Dusty tags out to Sapphire and Sapphire comes in. Savage couldn't lay a finger on her. He was obliged to tag out and get Sherry in the ring. So it was just the women against the women. But yeah, it was good.
So immediately after this, in Canada, on the live event, they went to an intermission, and that intermission was 5 minutes. They then came back with this next match that was pretty much what people have said were in the death slot. And it's the Orient Express, Sato and Tanaka with Mr. Fuji, the tag team that you mentioned, going up against Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, the Rockers. And it was the Orient Express defeating them by countout. It went for 7 minutes and 38 seconds.
Yeah.
It got 3 stars by Meltzer.
3 stars.
3 stars by Meltzer. And Meltzer goes on record by saying that he knows why they put them in that slot, because otherwise it would have been match of the night.
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd given them probably an extra 3 or 4 minutes as well, taking up to sort of 10 minutes long, they could have done so much. I mean, these guys, obviously without Sato, but Pat Tanaka and Paul Diamond were bad company in the AWA. They had a major feud against the Midnight Rockers, Michaels and Jannetty back then. So these guys mostly knew each other. They knew some of the spots to do. And it really did flow very well. And Orient Express, really good. They never really reached their peak, I don't think, in WWE. The Rockers, of course, amazing. And watching some of their tag team stuff now, it still holds up. Obviously, the legendary split happened sort of 18 months after this. But at the time that the Rockers were, you know, full on, it was a great match. Finished when Mr. Fuji got a handful of salt through it in Marty Jannetty's eyes, and he was wandering around outside the ring. And I remember him trying to wipe the salt out of his eyes with the ring apron. Like, how's that going to work?
It's gonna get
exactly.
Come on, logic.
So the Orient Express, they'd only debuted not too long before this, and again, giving them a bit of a push against the Rockers, who they didn't want them to lose properly, so the count out was the way they wanted to go. So yeah, it was a good match, solid match.
It's the days where the count outs actually meant something. You know, protect the tag team that you want to keep strong, but also make the other tag team look, or the other opponents look, relatively able.
Exactly.
So, you know, it was worth going. We moved into our next match. This is match 11. So by this point, you're kind of getting a little bit of burnout is kind of setting in. So you need a couple of matches to kind of calm you down. You don't get that. Next up is Jim Duggan defeating Dino Bravo with Jimmy Hart and Earthquake in his corner. 1.5 stars Meltzer gave this one. Can't really say much about it, really.
No, again, I mean, I think we talked earlier about the big build they were trying to give Earthquake, and this is all this really was. It didn't really matter about Jim Duggan. It didn't matter about Dino Bravo. It was just a match to set up Earthquake squashing Hacksaw Jim Duggan at the end of it. And that's 2 people that have been taken away on a stretcher after, in one pay-per-view. Jim Duggan back then, he was still thought of as a big, rough, tough guy. Dino Bravo, the world's strongest man, as they called him back then. Again, they were really good characters. Classic good guy, classic bad guy. It was a fun match. Duggan was never really the best in the ring, but he was always a good character. He could get the crowd behind him. And Dino Bravo was always the guy that you could just beat up for a bit of a laugh, which was great.
And Duggan was the first of two men that he got fed to. So we talked about Yokozuna earlier on. He got fed to Yokozuna in '93.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that was written off TV for quite a while, actually, due to the bonsai drop.
Yeah. So Jim Duggan was just that guy.
He was the full guy. He was Steve
Yes.
Majors. Lee Majors, not Steve Majors.
Lee Majors, Steve Austin.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. See,
I'm not Stone Cold.
No. All right. Next up was I would consider one of the main event matches.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you get this because of the story, and you also get this because of the promo that was cut before the match. Now, earlier on, I asked in your Discord forum on the MOS network, about Jake the Snake Roberts, and the reason that I asked that was because of this promo.
Amazing. So amazing. And again, stark contrast. This is why he was so good. Everyone else, you'd have Axe and Smash out there. They'd be shouting about what they were going to do. You had Hulk Hogan coming out and shouting about what he was going to do. You had the Warrior shouting about what he was going to do. Jake the Snake just very slowly, calmly enunciates what he's going to do. And it makes he stood out because of that. And that's why you paid attention to everything that he had to say. So yeah, this match, absolutely phenomenal. Jake, always one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. It had everything you wanted in it, really in this contest, the story, the psychology. I think you knew that DiBiase wasn't going to lose the $1 Million Championship. Well, not yet anyway. You knew he wasn't going to lose it straight away, but you just got believed in the match. And for 11 minutes, it was the second longest match on the night.
And again, such a story behind it. So Jake had stolen the $1 Million belt from the $1 Million Man. DiBiase wanted it back. So this was a singles match I don't think it was officially for the $1 Million Championship, but it was DiBiase's goal to beat Jake and then get that belt out of the sack, which also had a snake in it. So that was another thing. And the classic thing about this match that I'll always remember is $1 Million Man won as a result of a count out, Virgil interfering. But after the match, if you want to see how good Jake Roberts was at delivering a DDT, this is the only one you ever need to watch, is the post-match DDT by Jake the Snake on the $1 Million Man. And it's partially because Jake delivers it so well, partly because DiBiase takes it so well, but he literally pancakes face down and bounces off the mat. It's the best DDT you'll ever see in your life. Check it out. WrestleMania 6, $1 Million Man versus Jake the Snake.
Oh, you just told the pay-per-view on that one moment. We're almost at the end of the card, and we've got 3 matches to go, 2 matches before the main event. So let's skip over these 2 relatively fast. We had the Big Boss Man facing off against Akeem the African Dream, or the One Man Gang.
Now, a couple of things to talk to about this match, because after the $1 Million Man and Jake match, Ted DiBiase hid under the ring. And then when Big Boss Man came out for his match against Akeem, these two, formerly the Twin Towers, they were a tag team. They split up. Big Boss Man was unhappy with $1 Million Man because he tried to, if I remember rightly, pay off the Twin Towers to do something, and Big Boss Man didn't like it. That was how he went face. So anyway, DiBiase, whilst Boss Man was coming on the way to the ring, beat the crap out of him and then rolled him into the ring. But even due to that, Akeem still got beaten by the Big Boss Man, and it set up a nice feud for $1 Million Man and Big Boss Man.
And that's how it got half a star, minus half a star from Dave Meltzer. 1 minute 49 is how long that match ran for.
Unbelievable.
Next up, the penultimate match of the card, and one where you mentioned a bit more about in a second. It was Bobby Heenan's 3rd appearance on the pay-per-view. Jimmy Snuka went up against the newest member of the Heenan family, Ravishing Rick Rude.
Well, Rick Rude had been with the since the sort of 89 time.
Yeah, he had.
But it was Mr. Perfect was the guy who just after WrestleMania 6 won the Intercontinental Championship, and was Bobby Heenan's newest charge. Obviously, he picked up the Barbarian as well. So 2 new people for Bobby Heenan around about that time to kind of replace Andre the Giant. But yeah, Rick Rude again. We were in the build here for. I mean, whether or not they were thinking about it at the time, again, Jimmy Snuka kind of taking the Hercules role and the Tito Santana role of I'm going to get beaten up by a guy that we're looking to push. Rick Rude, 3 minutes 59 seconds, sort of showcases all of his stuff and does the Rude Awakening on Jimmy Snuka.
Great worker, wasn't he?
He was. Really good. And a bit of a new look for Rick Rude. It wasn't too long after this that he cut his hair off completely, but we'd always used to see the big sort of poofy perm that he had. But this match, he wet it all down, and it was an interesting look for him. Beats Jimmy Snuka, who was at that time still a pretty good worker.
Yeah, I think you could tell his career was beginning to wind down, though. I mean, definitely at WrestleMania 7 against The Undertaker, you just knew he was on the outs, but... You know, nice little match just to set us up for this one. The Ultimate Challenge. Hulk Hogan, the World Wrestling Federation champion, the Ultimate Warrior, the World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental champion, title for title, 24 minutes and 51 seconds. The big one. This is what it was all about.
Absolutely. And something to point out here, every single match in the run up to this, you had all of the performers come into the ring on the little classic WrestleMania carts. They were sort of mini versions of rings. They were sat in there and they just slowly cruised their way to the ring while their music was playing. They didn't use those on this occasion. So first up, you had the Ultimate Warrior introduced first. He ran all the way to the ring, all the way through like to the center of a baseball stadium. He was exhausted by the time he got there. You could see it. And then Hulk Hogan follows out and he walks all the way to the ring. The crowd were going absolutely crazy, and just led to the big stare down before the match even started. And I'd love to get a shot of that, sort of framed on my wall, just the two of them staring at each other. Fantastic, iconic shot.
Iconic. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Now, bit of trivia for you. Did you know that in that 24-minute match, there was only 9 minutes and 12 seconds of actual wrestling time?
It doesn't surprise me because there were a lot of rest holds. I mean, these guys were big. I mean, really, cardio wasn't really the thing back then. They were just big, muscly guys. They needed a lot of rest holds. They needed to wander around outside the ring a little bit. That you if you watch it, being as cynical as about wrestling as you can be today, you sort of, that's a rest hold. They were tired there. They needed to stop. But as a kid, you didn't think that. You just thought, Hulk Hogan's so amazing. He's beating up Ultimate Warrior. Warrior's so amazing. He's beating up Hogan. They're both absolutely decimated. That's why they have to keep stopping and slowing down.
Well, you know how, negative Dave Meltzer can be.
Yeah.
So this is a quote taken from the Wrestling Observer the week after WrestleMania. So this is the recap of WrestleMania 6. Warrior pinned Hogan in 23:59 to win the championship. This was probably the best booked wrestling match I've ever seen. Now, the reason I say this is they took 2 limited wrestlers, neither of whom have the ability to carry an opponent, and managed to create a classic match with them. When you watch the match a second time, it had many stalling spots and rest holds, but wrestling is meant for single-time viewing, and even though Flair and Steamboat kept their luster, they get better with repeated viewings. It's true, isn't it?
Oh, totally. I mean, again, it was that superhero era, and this was all you needed from it. The 2 biggest superheroes against each other. You didn't, like I said earlier, you didn't care if they were doing any sort of monkey flips or dives over the top rope or anything like that. It was just these 2 massive guys. One of them was going to win, and who was it going to be? That's all you cared about.
And you talk about WrestleMania 18 with Hogan Rock and the passing of the torch match. This really was the passing of the baton of the WWF of the old generation, if you think about it.
Yeah. I don't think Hogan was ever really the same after this. I mean, for a couple of reasons. He obviously he took some time off shortly after this. They wrote him out off of TV because of the earthquake splash, and he went off to film Suburban Commando at the time. But it was all around about the time that the steroid stuff started bubbling away, and you could clearly tell. it's going to sound like I'm an advocate for steroids, but the Hulk Hogan from the mid 80s up until arguably this match and shortly afterwards, he was the one who was on stuff all the time and is constantly sweating and absolutely massive. He came back even at SummerSlam and was substantially smaller than he was before. And he was never really the same. So, I mean, this is my Hulk Hogan. This is the Hulk Hogan that I remember and my favorite version of this. Sort of from, I don't know, probably 88 through to 90 is the guy I remember as being the Hulk Hogan.
Despite all the iconic moments he's had since that, with the NWO and Bash at the Beach and Hogan Rock and stuff, I think you're right. If he had just sailed off into the sunset at that point with going up the cart, looking forlorn and thinking this is the end of me, I would have been quite happy with that, because that was really that was the moment, wasn't it? If you were a warrior, if you were a warrior maniac or a Hulkamaniac, that was it. Now those carts were only used twice.
Yeah, it was 3 and 6, wasn't it?
3 and 6, and I think they brought them back again a few years later at one of the double figure manias, but it was definitely 3 and 6. They were brilliant. I loved them. They should have brought them back.
They were good. And it definitely gave it a different feel. WrestleMania today is just, what set are they going to have? That's all anyone cares about. But this made it feel a little bit different. And something that Hogan said, again, Hulk Hogan's biography, if you read it, it's a lot of fiction in it. And especially seeing as at the time when he wrote it, he wasn't on, Warrior wasn't his best friend. They were a bit at odds. But Hogan said, whilst Warrior was stood in the ring raising the belts and all the fireworks were going off, there were a few shots of Hogan sort of cruising away in one of those little carts, and just the look on his face, everyone was, you could sort of feel his thought, like, so I'm going to be back. This hasn't gone my way, but wait until I come back. And he was more over by losing than he was if he would have just won. And
Warrior never really got over as the champ, did he?
No, not really. And again, maybe because he didn't have that many good opponents. I mean, you had Rick Rude and you had Mr. Perfect. They were only the real people who were left for the Warrior to beat. $1 Million Man, maybe, but he was started to get involved in a Dusty Rhodes feud. They didn't really have too many people for the Warrior to go against. Hogan, had Savage, but they kept Savage for Warrior up until 1991. But at that point, that was when Warrior lost the belt. It just didn't really work out, and the weird promos that he didn't really connect with the fans as well as Hogan did.
His promos seemed to get more eccentric as he went on. I mean, you've seen the video that Christian's done quite a few times on the self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior special. And actually, when you listen back to it and you watch the promo on WrestleMania 6, you do sit there going, "What the hell?"
At the time, you didn't really care, but again, he just didn't have that. You had a connection with Hogan because he was just a normal guy who was a wrestler, whereas Warrior was this guy from outer space and the heavens and the stars and all of this. And I'm like, well, great, but who are you? Why are you saying all this stuff?
Yeah,
kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's why it kind of fell on Hogan's side a little bit more, definitely.
But you could tell a year later the run hadn't worked. Hogan was back. Went up against Slaughter at WrestleMania 7. You had to have the title match there because it was good versus evil, the USA versus the Iraqi sympathizer. So you knew that was going to happen. Wouldn't have been quite the same match if he had headlined WrestleMania 7 with Slaughter versus the Ultimate Warrior.
No. I mean, the match at the Rumble where he lost the championship to Slaughter was, all that was designed to do was not for Slaughter to win, but it was just to set up the Warrior and Savage feud.
The career-ending match, yeah.
But I mean, overall, it was a great card. I mean, the match was phenomenal. I always remember it being great. Even watching it today, still one of my favorite matches of all time. It's got a lot of rewatchability.
And just think, this was April the 1st, 1990.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're talking 31 years ago.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like you said, you can still sit there and watch a 3.5 hour pay-per-view event of WrestleMania 6 and watch it and enjoy it, compared to now where you watch a 3.5 hour wrestling event and just want to jump off the side of a building.
Yeah, I'm with
you. It has the initials WWE, if AEW, not so much, but WWE, jump off the side of a building. Mate, I've really enjoyed this. It has been really good.
And do you know what? I think we should announce it now, Andy. yeah, we've enjoyed doing this so much, and thank you for you and the Retro Chat podcast for having me on. It's been great catching up with you, and it's been great talking old school wrestling. But let's talk some current wrestling, and I can't think of anywhere better to do it than live on Ministry of Slam this coming Sunday. We're going to be going live from 7 p.m. and for the first time in a long time, not even going to count years, but a long time, Andy, you are going to be with us on Ministry of Slam.
I am.
7 p.m.
Yeah. I can't
this
wait.
Coming Sunday. It's going to be great. It's going to be like old times. I've got some graphics to design because I need to design another 3-person window thing, but that's all good. You need to send me the Retro Chat logo so I can put it on the
I will do.
Yeah, do that.
and also, just before we go, I can't wait to come back onto Ministry and be with you and Lauren and you and Lawrence one more time. It's going to be fantastic. But major congratulations to you and to Law, because we didn't touch on it at the beginning of the show. I was kind of waiting on it to now. You came back in January. You've already consistently now broken the top 50, top 30 UK wrestling podcasts. That's a major achievement on Apple. This past week, you announced that you had been signed by Twitch and the Sports Accelerator program. So massive congratulations. That is a testament to what you guys are doing right now.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's going to be a lot of, there has been a lot of hard work already. There's been days taken off of work to design stuff and get stuff sorted, pre-tape some stuff and all of that. And again, the Twitch Sports Accelerator thing is going to be big, but it's going to mean to sort of live up to their kind of restrictions, we have to put in a fair bit of comments. So there's going to be some watch-alongs and things like that going on. We're probably going to do one of those this week at some point. So yeah, it's going to be fun. There's going to be lots of stuff happening, and again, we don't really care about the success. We don't care about the money side of it or anything. We just want people. We just want to spend a Sunday night talking wrestling with jaded wrestling fans. At the end of the day, people who are annoyed as we are about what WWE has become, and just we came up with a new tagline this past week, and I've already forgotten what the hell it was because I haven't done any of the graphics for it yet. But basically, we're the wrestling show for fans who are a bit annoyed with current wrestling, but still want to have a laugh and a joke about it. So, come along 7 p.m. UK time, ministryofslam.co.uk. Andy's back this week.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it. Lee, thank you so much for joining us. It has been so fun and so cool having us back together again for a 2-man show like the old days. I almost got the TSC logo up and put it up, but kind of couldn't find it. So we didn't do that. Now, don't forget, here on Retro Chat, if you want to listen to archive and classic Lee and Andy, you can, because From the Vault still being released, some of the interviews that we did back in the day. Listen back to them now. I do cringe sometimes.
Yeah, some of them aren't great.
Wow. It's we've changed a lot over a period of time. That was 2005, 2006, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That was when we started it. I mean, that's 15 years ago.
Yeah.
16 years ago. So yeah, a long time. We've developed over that period a lot.
Some people will say we've developed better. Some will say we've developed.
Well, all I'm going to say is we've developed. That's all.
Yeah, we've done something. Listen to those. Also, don't forget, we've got more Retro Chat coming up next week. I don't know what we're doing yet. I haven't decided, but next week will be something. Maybe Knight Rider. Might do the Knight Rider.
Love Knight Rider.
Yeah, let's do Knight Rider. Haven't done that yet. We'll do Knight Rider.
Knight Rider.
Stay on the line. Stay on the line. Stay on the screen.
I'll stay on the line.
Stay on the line. Stay on the screen for me for just a minute. Until next week. See you very soon. Take care. See you at the matches.
Bye.